Hi, all. So before the video begins, I want to thank all of you for tuning in again. I did want to mention that there were intermittent audio issues and even with the visual side due to internet issues during the recording. So whether or not you're only listening to the audio portion, the few audio gaps shouldn't be much of an issue, so I added subtitles for those. There are minor cases of lag which affected the audio, but those minor occurrences are fine. It would have been nice to add subtitles for the entire video or even just re-record the video entirely, but there isn't enough bandwidth to do that. That being said, I really hope you find this video useful as it contains valuable information. So welcome back, everybody. Here with Stephanie. We met on LinkedIn. I was actually looking for a different Stephanie early on, and then she popped up. I was like, "Oh, great profile." So it's like, let's see if we can connect. And now we're here. So yeah. So if you want to introduce yourself real quick, that'll be fantastic.
Awesome.
What you
Yeah.
do, I guess.
Hi everyone. I'm Stephanie. I'm a self-taught iOS engineer working for PayPal, and I also really enjoy mentoring other folks who are teaching themselves the code and want to break into tech just like I did.
Awesome. So speaking of which, how did you get into coding?
I would say that it happened when I had met somebody who was coding, and then we dated for a little bit, and through him I met other people who are in tech. So this all happened like within the last 3 to 4 years. So I'm still actually considered new to tech, compared to other people who went to college for a computer science degree. So they've been doing it since like, they were 18. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much how I got started. I met, and then I also met others who were self-taught iOS engineers at a hackathon back a few years ago. And because of them, that's why I didn't end up going to a boot camp or back to school. They all encouraged me to go down the self-taught route.
Awesome. So what were you doing at like before self-taught?
Yeah. So before I became an engineer, I was so I had studied chemical engineering back in college. My intentions were to work as a engineer for L'Oreal at one of the production
Oh,
plants
okay.
because I've always been really interested in design, colored art, and I just thought, that'd be a really cool way to mesh some sort of like technical aspects and it's not really artistic, but I get to work with colors. And I was like, oh, maybe I can just like work for L'Oreal. That'd be really cool. Well, um, didn't really pan out like that. I started out by working for Colgate and yeah, did a lot of the fast moving consumer goods, working in personal care production. So I worked there as a supervisor, and then the next two jobs after that were pretty similar. They were also in manufacturing and also with personal goods like hand soap or deodorant or toothpaste, things like that. Um, so that's what I was doing until I realized that, I had quit my first job and I got laid off from my next two, all within three and a
Oh
half
wow.
years. So that's really short for someone right out of college. And then I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I've never loved engineering. I've never loved manufacturing. So I'm just gonna just do something that really sparks my interests, which yeah, over time it turned into working in the tech and working as a software engineer.
That's awesome. So let's see. So then, like during the whole period of transition, like how did you keep yourself motivated to
Mm,
like commit? I guess because I know a lot of
mhm.
people, or not a lot of people, but like I know people out there. If they try to commit to something absolutely new, or not, maybe not even absolutely new, but like something relatively new, and then they're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh shoot, like there's so many, like it just could get so frustrating. So how did you then kind of overcome um, situations like that and just keep pushing yourself until you kind of broke out of
Yeah. So I think this is actually a hot topic because yesterday I posted like a list of get to know me questions on my Instagram stories, and four people asked me about what motivates me. And I was like, okay, I didn't know like out of 50 questions, like four people will ask this. Um, yeah, so in terms of motivation, like I'll be honest, and like I had tried learning to code back like 3 years ago, and I had tried like another time 2 years ago, but I only lasted for like a month, and I realized like it's because I just like it just depends on what your mind is. It's all about your mindset. So back then, um I had so much else going on in my life that was more important than coding. So for me, I wasn't able to motivate myself enough to transition and get a new job because I had more important things. Like I was unemployed and I wasn't getting government assistance. So I needed to look for some sort of job, and I didn't have the financial means to just code and wait to see what happens, right? And I was also going through some other issues with, having moved cross country and I didn't know anybody here, so I was dealing with a lot of like emotional things, with like depression, a lot of anxiety. So it wasn't until my third time of trying, which was last year in 2020, when I really just like sat down and told myself like no matter what, even if I go have to work at a coffee shop or bag groceries, like I'm going to somehow change my career into tech. And that's it. And I think what really helped is that I kind of made it a game out of myself because at first, when I had been laid off end of 2019, um, I was like coding for a week and then not for another week. And anybody who's ever taught themselves maybe like a new language, like that's not very efficient way of learning. And so it was until I guess like the pandemic hit and I was like, oh yeah, now I have time to make a bunch of projects because recruiters are not looking for people. So then I kind of just like really pushed myself and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna code. I set goals for myself and I coded every day for 15 weeks straight, except for one day off. And yeah, what really motivated me was just needing a job and not wanting to go
Yeah.
back to my previous jobs.
Awesome. So for anybody out there, 15 weeks is basically the same duration, if not a bit longer.
That's like boot
Yeah, a
camp.
bit longer than your standard 12-week boot camp. Um yeah. So take it from people. If you ever need to commit, she's your go-to person. But yeah, like for me, I found it super hard even with because I was one of the first classes, I guess.
Oh.
First four. Um not necessarily like one, two, three, and four, but I was cohort four for Codesmith.
Mm.
Well, I started off three and then I was having like it was just super tough, so like I moved to four. Um
Mm-hmm.
but the first time within cohort three, it got to a point where I actually was like, is this right for me? Because, I was struggling with Angular JS. Like the $ scope was like a pain in the arse. For you who don't know what arse is, that's the Irish word for butt, the more derogatory term.
No.
I learned that from watching too much wrestling. But yeah, and it got to a point where I questioned too, like, is this really what I want to do? And like, I
Mm-hmm.
had days where I cried, to be honest, because I was like, how do all these other people who basically who might have a little bit more coding experience, but some not as much, how are they able to understand the material more than me, right? And we're all putting in the
Yeah.
same hours, me if not a little bit more. Um, and it was frustrating because, like, you know, you can't do what you can't do, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, so committing is super important, whether or not you're taking camp or going the self taught route. Um, so I guess then in terms of, because tech evolves, right? Even if you're studying, so how were you able to like kind of then decide, okay, this is the thing I need to look at. This is the type of material that's going to be good, and on top of like keeping the latest versions of that.
Yeah. So I think what really helped was that I actually had a friend who offered to mentor me. That was by far probably the most helpful thing ever. And he was also self-taught. He had an incredible journey as well. Like he went from knowing no Swift, which is the language used for iOS development. Oh, actually, no, back then it was Objective-C. So he learned Objective-C to building 6 apps that got released into the App Store all within 3 months. And he also got like a job like a month after that with Disney, of all places. And so
Oh
he
goodness.
yeah, he offered to mentor me. And keep in mind this was like 5, 6 years ago. So um it is harder to get a job like that these days. You don't just like
Yeah.
it's a little harder to just like fly through something and then just like have a normal interview, as in like no technical questions, which is what he had, and just get a
Yeah.
job. Um yeah, so yeah, he was really gracious. And it's not that we like sat down and had like formal, oh, how are things going or something, but I always like I was able to ask him questions. But he also did things where he made sure like he wasn't trying to answer every question. And I think that was important
Mm,
because it teaches
yeah.
you to, or teach I taught myself how to Google, how to look my answers up, because at the end of the day, that's what will be expected of you on the job. Like your seniors are not going to tell you everything. Um, there'll be some level of expectation that you're going to go out and find answers yourself before
Yep.
you
Yep.
ask them. So, yeah. So he was really helpful in like telling me exactly what I should learn, and he also pushed me to like apply earlier than I thought that um uh apply earlier than I thought I was ready for. Because a lot of people, they just get stuck
Mm,
doing a lot of tutorials or building a lot of projects, and then like, oh, I'm not ready, until it's too late, and then it's like 6 months out.
yeah. Absolutely. I mean, well, I guess if you put out 6 apps that are pretty consumed, or regularly consumed, then I would be surprised if they asked you technical. I mean, provided if they don't, then that to me is a little bit of a yellow flag. But if it's like they fly through this and it's like, okay, we don't need to basically quiz you anymore. Like here's an offer. So that's
Yeah.
pretty impressive.
Well, 6 years ago, like
There was
the
something.
the
Yeah.
way coding and the way technical interviews were done is so different from nowadays, is what I hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind,
Absolutely.
y'all.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
will definitely be asked
Maybe
technical
like these
questions.
days, algorithms. Yeah, algorithms, data structures. Like I was even applying for a QA role, way back, and it was manual testing. And lo and behold, they asked me about binary search tree. I'm like, oh my goodness,
What?
good thing I
That's so random.
this is. I mean, it was really odd, but it is an engineering role after all, so you kind of need to have some level of expertise. But for manual testing, I was like, shouldn't you be asking more about like how we test things? But I mean, this
Yeah.
was also like 5 years ago as well. So
Oh, wow.
there was one thing I was gonna say, but I totally forgot what it was. But if it pops up, then pops up. Um, then I guess now that you're, oh, I guess this question should probably come after the next one. So the next one is, so then from there, what kind of excited you then to apply for a PL? Because I feel like early on, I tell people, um, and maybe might start ringing a bell for the previous question, but I tell people like you know, for your first couple of interviews, don't apply for companies necessarily that you want. Provided if companies hear this, then they'll be like, oh wait, this is they won't actually know if a candidate's really like their first, like this is the first company they're applying for. But generally, I tell them, okay, I have like the first 3 or 5 companies that you don't want to necessarily be at for that practice, and then from there, pick the ones that you really want. For me, it'll be like, say, Riot Games, Blizzard, Verizon, AT&T, Verizon Media, which I'm at now, and things like that. Like those would be Disney and whatever. Like you kind of get the point. So like the big ones, I would hope to put later, and then the other ones, like the smaller companies, I would kind of prefer to put in the beginning. So then for you, like, was PayPal towards the beginning, and if then, like, how were you able to make that work?
Sure. So if it was towards the beginning, I actually had companies reaching out to me starting in January, and it was only because I started to I started to revise my LinkedIn profile so that it was now all catered towards iOS software engineer and not chemical engineer or production supervisor anymore. Um, but then the pandemic happened, and then so that really slowed things down for a while. I would say March, April. So I didn't really hear from companies for like 2 months because they were, everybody knows March and April are very chaotic for the economy and the world. A lot of companies had layoffs. A lot of companies were not hiring because they didn't know what was going on. They were very hesitant. Um, yeah, so I would say by about like end of April to May is when a lot of more companies started to reach out again. By then, I would say that that's probably like when someone from PayPal reached out to me. So I didn't apply. So someone found me on LinkedIn, and the recruiter offered, they asked me, oh, yeah, are you interested in applying for this role? And then we can do like an interview. So that's how it got started with PayPal. Yeah, I didn't apply to them, but I always encourage people, yeah, like you said, apply to companies that you don't necessarily really want right now, but it's just to get yourself acquainted with the interview styles, like the different kind of questions that might be asked before you have those bigger
Yeah,
companies that you're really eyeing for, and then start interviewing with those.
absolutely. So because people ask me, like, I've had people come up and say, like, hey, how does my resume look, right? Like new grads on
Mm-hmm.
occasion, not all the time, or even like people from the coding boot camp. When I was there, and maybe even a couple cohorts later, they were saying like, oh, just find people within like the cohort, or within like the CodeSmith or even bootcamp world, and then on LinkedIn, and just like reach out and greet yourself, and then just add them and see what happens. Um, and these days, it's more of like, as much as your resume is important, I would say now it's almost as much geared towards LinkedIn. If they're not correlated, they're more of like two different avenues, right? Because people, like, I've had recruiters reach out to me as well. The moment I kind of put Verizon Media on my profile, they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh my god, he's right," or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And then, especially with catering, as you said, your profile to the specific industry that you're in. It doesn't even matter if it's engineering. If you're going for like chemical engineering or aerospace or construction or something, that then catering your profile to that goes a long way. Also, like, being picky with what word you're using. But on top of that, that's one way. And then in terms of then direct applying, there's the resume way, right? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you submit your LinkedIn profile as your resume, which kind of goes hand in hand with making sure both are aligned.
Yeah.
So that's awesome that someone was able to reach out
Yeah.
to
I actually
you. And
encourage I actually
yeah,
encourage people, whether they're from a boot camp or self-taught, to actually use the LinkedIn algorithm to your advantage. So
Yep.
LinkedIn, a lot of people think the LinkedIn profile, a lot of people think that it's supposed to be it can just be like a copy of your resume. But if you think about it, like your resume, it does go through, the applicant tracking system or the applicant tracking software, but then um with LinkedIn, it's all based off of an algorithm. So when like a hiring manager or a recruiter types up like keywords for the type of candidates they want to search for, like software engineer or data scientist, then your name is going to pop up in their list. But if it's not, but like if there aren't enough keywords in your profile, then actually you don't show up in that list. And then that's why recruiters might not reach out to you. So that's why I was able to have like some
Yeah.
really big companies be able to reach out to me on LinkedIn, even though I had no professional experience in software engineering. So yeah, that's just something to keep
Yeah.
in mind. Yeah.
Absolutely. Even with the whole
Definitely
applicant
after the
tracking
first
system with
job.
yeah. Especially once, because I tell people like, hey, once you get your first job, it makes it easier because now you at least have things you can
Mm-hmm.
put on your resume, even if you don't know what keyword necessarily triggers that match. Have that, so whatever word you pick, hopefully, is more technical in that aspect. But even with the whole, submit your resume instead of your LinkedIn profile, there's still algorithms that are like software that kind of scans your thing and then decides, okay, we'll push it to a recruiter or what have you. Um, and which is strange because it's like, well, you're trying to hire people, but you're having a robot kind of decide for you off the bat. Anyways,
Yeah.
that's a whole, in the future kind of thing. So then for you now, like now that you're, situated in PayPal, do you do like projects on the side or on the weekend
Mhm.
to kind of hone your skills or
Mhm.
kind of just for fun?
Mm, I would say that I don't, because for me, I see coding more
Mm.
as a job than as a job and a hobby. Some people, they love coding
Okay.
different type of like projects on the side. And I think like as long as you have a good work-life balance, like I think that's really awesome. I honestly also just haven't thought of any cool projects to build. So that's also another reason why I don't have any like side projects that are going on. Yeah. How about you? How many side projects do you have?
Oh, I have. So let me pop open my calendar again because I have a list. I have. So I'm working on one that's been in the works for about 7 months, but it initially just started off as like a fun project. It's based off of, I don't know if you heard of Riot Games,
Yep.
but their API. So I was like, okay, well, a lot of these sites, even Riot Games, surprisingly, their match history site can be a little bit buggy. So like if you smash the refresh button, sometimes it doesn't load, or if you click back, it might get a little weird. There's an OPGG that kind of does the same thing as the natural match history site from Riot Games. I was like, okay, let's put a twist to it where instead of just viewing a history, you see more of like the in-game, right? Like momentum and in-game like feel of what people are doing. So that was what my first iteration was doing, or my first like release was doing. And then this time around, I was like, okay, well, the first one is like super broken. Code looks like doo doo because I wrote it like 4 years ago. Um, like nested calls everywhere. So I was like, okay, let me be a bit better with how I do it. So I, for my previous position and then Firebase, Redux, and things like that. So I thought that was really
Mm-hmm.
cool. And then
Mm-hmm.
later, it's like, okay, I kind of want to use this myself. So it became more of a me thing. Like if people say, oh, like can we have this feature? Right? It's not like I'm gonna publicly announce, hey, I released this, because in the end, I only care if I use it and if I like it, because it's more for me. And if people want to use it, that's great. And if I have a lot of people that ask for a specific feature, I might consider, because in the end, the project, and I'm thank you for asking because I'm going off, is that I realized that there is going to be maintenance work, right, going in, especially if Riot Games' API changed, which kind of did with version 5 versus V4. So I was like, okay, I kind of want to create something that though I want to use it, I kind of like 80% get catered towards me, or like 70%, and then 20-30% would be towards whoever else. And then, but that would still require maintenance, right? So I wanted to create something that's like basic but thorough, but also have minimal maintenance. So a lot of features I kind of left out because I was like, okay, if the AP changes, then I would have to go sit through all these, and I kind of don't want to. I want to let it like be in the back burner for a bit. So that's one, and then I have a Pokédex, I guess, application that was actually a. This is for people out there too. Sometimes your application or like your technical take home um, can be, I guess, used as your personal project in a sense that you build it for a technical thing, and then you're like, okay, well, it's not like they're using it and it's mine, so let me just expand it and create my own project. So that's how Pokédex or I call it Pokemans. I don't know what kind of pushed me to use Pokemon. That came out. It looks like crap, so I plan
That's
to update that
cool.
as my next one, and then
Yeah.
yeah, do some maintenance work. And then in terms of an app idea for mobile app, well, because this would then require me to get into mobile, and I don't know if I kind of have the capacity yet to do that. But for you, maybe this could be a collaboration thing. Is a bowling score application. See how you're doing. Yeah, because
Oh, okay.
I used to go bowling every week, so I was like, oh shoot,
Mm.
I started averaging points per game, and then eventually it started going up and up and up. Now it's like 140. I haven't bowled in a while, but I think my max is 183. So for me, I want to kind of. I'm curious how I did over the weeks, or even like every
Yeah.
time I played, um,
Yeah.
and then see like graphs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe this could be, or even if it's just a web application, that's another idea. I don't know if people out there are going to steal it, but if you do, then screw you. Because then people will know, oh, the bowling score application with graphs, well, it came from Leonard, so
Well,
we'll
I'm pretty sure
give
if we go on
I'm
our
gonna
phones right
patent this one idea.
now, there's like a
Yeah, I'm
few.
sure there's
There's probably
something,
already a few.
but I usually, yeah. I mean, it's like the fitness app, like there's so many like fit app or whatever. I'm sure, like I've never really cared to look at those because I'm not into that. I was like, that might be another app or web application. It's like a, because I kind of do powerlifts too. So I'm like, well, I want to know how I'm doing. But then that becomes a little bit tricky in terms of seeing your numbers go up because it depends on what your goal is for that week. So I'm kind of going off. But yeah, eventually I want to get into like hardware, software, like Arduinos, even though that's like the thing of the past almost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nice.
Hype was like a while back. But yeah, so that's me. Kind of am glad someone asked me about projects because I've honestly been doing projects
Oh.
since 2017. Whether or not it's off of work and I hang out with friends, but it's like a study sessions and I was working on some projects. Even now, um, I'm kind of doing projects for fun. It's weird because though I do, and this is gonna be a too is though I like doing projects, I don't necessarily know if I want to do engineering for like until I retire. Because you're gonna have all these new people with who start off learning later tech, right? Like ES20 or something like that, right? Coming in, and by the time we're like in say 40s, I'm sure there are very good engineers out there who are in their later years, but it's it's can feel kind of redundant as well. So maybe I might move into product management someday, not anytime soon though, or design, or maybe just switch careers completely and go into teach. I was kind of curious about before, and apparently like to do, um, like for fun. But yeah. So
Yeah.
then, for you, do you kind of see yourself engineering for like years on end, or is this like something to think about later?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think usually like everyone I've ever talked to who's an engineer always say that they Nobody seems to want to work until as an engineer until retire. Like a lot. I
Yeah.
think a majority of people they all said that they want to start their own business. Although, I find like a lot of people they just have the idea, but they don't actually make any actions to go down that route. But
Hmm.
then again, it's like you start a business anytime. You can do it in your 40s. You can still be like wildly successful. So it doesn't really matter, I guess, it's like as long as you're building up those skill sets to help with whatever you want to do
Yeah.
20, 30 years from now. Yeah. I think like for myself, I'm like in the same boat as probably like everyone else around my age where I don't see myself necessarily being an engineer for life. I love it. There's a lot of aspects that I think would be really awesome to explore, like being more of like a going down the route of being like a UI engineer or working as like an AR engineer be something that I'd love to explore down the road. But I think just like many others, I would probably want to branch off one day, have my own business. And like at the end of the day, I really love to educate and mentor others. So that's definitely like a path that I really want to explore.
Awesome. It's like a engineering counselor or something like that, potentially.
I feel like
So
I feel like
so
those
then,
are more and more popular.
oh yeah. Especially I would say, I don't know about with necessarily boot camps because there's more of like a boot camp community like within each one, but maybe potentially with more of the self taught. I mean, I've had people reach out to me, like even currently saying like, "Oh, do you need like a career coach?" I'm like, I'm okay. Not that I, who knows? Maybe I actually need one. Maybe I don't. It's just more of like I don't necessarily think I would make the best use of it now. Maybe I would have 4 years ago. And I was,
Yeah.
but yeah. So I guess moving then into the next question, like, how is it working? So I don't know if it's the same with like front end engineers, back end, full stack, iOS, and for you as like a iOS engineer or mobile engineer, how is it working with other engineers that are not within like your field of like the iOS and mobile world, and even then with designers and product? Like, is it is it different than you would potentially see like UI engineers or full stack interactions?
Mm, I mean, because I'm still like a junior slash mid-level engineer, I don't actually have to work with engineers that are outside my team quite yet. I mean, I do
Mm,
sometimes, but it's not like I'm working on like any specific projects where I'm relying on them. There is currently one project I'm on, but someone else on my team is already taking care of it. I would say like in terms of working
mm,
with like designers or product managers, like because iOS engineering is considered a type of front end engineering, um, like you're going to be talking with the designers and the product managers a lot, and I think it's really important to have constant communication all the time because you know the constant complaint would be that oh designers say oh the engineers don't follow our designs, and then engineers will just say like oh you know designs that you're giving us are near impossible due to a lot of constraints that we already have, and so there's always that sort of friction. But I think like as long as there's conversation like early on, then a lot of those sort of like confusions can be cleared up rather than you know when the project is expected to be finished. But you don't have to work with any designers or the product manager, right? Oh, I can't hear you.
sorry, I was muted the entire
Yeah.
the the perks. Um, previous like within my previous role, I was kind of like it's weird. So during my time as a Q engineer, I was kind of like the liaison between, I would say, more of front end engineering, uh, mobile, I guess, as well as design. So I was kind of doing a little bit of design stuff in the sense that, you know, designer would be like, okay, what does front end want? Does he want this here kind of thing? So be like, okay, well, he said, you know, X, so then they would move it to Y. So I was kind of doing that. And in previous role, kind of the same thing. We would kind of work with the design, but not necessarily dictate like what needs to be done. It's just more of, okay, here are the colors that we can use. It's like, can you guys make it work, kind of thing. And then now it's more of like, I'm not directly working with the designer. They just like pass, I guess, the design to product, and the product like throws it in a ticket or something. Or, you know, if I have a question, then I'll just reach out directly. But I haven't really worked with a designer directly with in my current role because he's just stupidly busy. So design stuff always just seems like figure it out later kind of thing, which is totally fine. I really enjoy that flexibility, but at the same time, I know it can be pretty annoying, even for myself as well. Like because, you know, I'd have to commit, and then the product would check it, and they're like, "Oh, can we move this to the left a little bit?" It's like, just give me design, or something like that. So it can be frustrating, but at the same time, I think because the workload though is a lot, it's not like overwhelmingly a lot. So I kind of don't mind commit and things like that. But usually I'll take a screenshot first and see what they think, so I don't have to commit. Like, you don't see 50 commits off of a color, just what kind of happened before. So yeah. Let's see. So then do you do mostly just like mobile apps, or do you do like or iOS apps, or do you do like iOS web as well?
You know,
I feel
I
like it would
only
be more of iOS app
yeah,
than
I only do apps.
hmm.
Yep. I actually haven't taken the time to learn other languages, and I specifically chose iOS development for one because I really do love it more than web development, which I had tried before, and then two, with Swift, you really only need to learn one language in order to get a job, and with any job, especially the first one, like it's best to become like a master of one than to be a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
So that's why I really chose. Uh, yeah, that's why I really like iOS development. You only really need to learn Swift, and you don't need to worry about like other languages or frameworks or what have you, just to get a job. So yeah.
Awesome. So then how do you or how do you and your team dictate like, hey, let's not support V5 or like, or you know, the whole iPhone 5 thing anymore? Um,
Hmm.
like
That's
what,
more of
like who
a
determines that, and like how do you guys like then say,
mhm.
okay, well, we need to start supporting iOS 13 or whatever, like
Yeah,
iPhone, whatever the thing is. I don't
yeah.
even know. But,
That's why every year it's like a headache when WWDC
oh
comes
boy.
around because there's always
Yeah.
like version updates to the iOS platform for the phones, or the like coding language like with Swift, or maybe like with Xcode, there's a new update to the software. So the team always have to scramble to figure out how we're going to support it. But I believe that decision's made more higher up. Um,
Hmm.
because like PayPal is it's a conglomerate. So it has a bunch of other products and brands and companies below it. So there's like Braintree, there's of course the PayPal app that us like we might use on our own phones, but then there's also like PayPal Merchant slash PayPal Business. There's also one for Honey, there's Venmo, there's Zoom, XOOM, which is used a lot in Europe, and a bunch of other things. So just like across the board, um, not every single product is going to maybe migrate to a newer version of iOS. but definitely like within each product and brand itself, like there's that collective understanding about like, oh, we're not going to be supporting iOS 11 anymore, and yeah, go from there. But there's also like a lot of data that was supported. So the company would have data about like how many users are still on
Mm,
iOS 11 to determine if it's really worth um it's really worth supporting a outdated version, or not outdated, but just like an older version. Mhm.
gotcha. I don't know what that song was. So like final moments here. So like I really only have like one or two more. But if you could have changed anything about your previous career path or even your current one, what would that be? Or would you change anything at all?
Mm.
Like maybe like, hey, I would have wanted to discover iOS engineering like when I was like 12, or like not to that extreme, but hopefully something like that.
Dude, I actually have a good friend who started coding when he was 12.
Oh my
And I was
goodness.
like, what the heck? Yeah, and he's 18 now, and he's just a phenomenal Android developer, iOS developer, backend engineer, and web engineer. And he's also quite gifted in UX UI design, which is
Oh my
very,
goodness.
very unusual. Yeah. I would say this would probably be out of my control. But then, well, so I wish I grew up in an area that had this sort of exposure to tech, or people um who maybe, childhood friends or something, they like went off to go into tech, or something like that. So really like the environments that I grew up in, but then again, can't really change that. So I grew up in South Carolina, which is
Yeah.
by far like the most non-tech place. Something I could have controlled would be to have gone to a college where I would have more of those opportunities. I'd be surrounded by more entrepreneurial people. Um, so I think that's probably the main thing I would have done, is gone to a college where I would have been exposed to much more than just party and football. Yeah, because I went to like an in-state school in South Carolina, and I studied chemical engineering. Um, I 100% do not use that degree anymore. So I don't know. It's kind of like, at the same time, it kind of brought me opportunities, but who knows, right? I feel like I went
Yeah.
through a lot of ups and downs with um by starting out with a degree that I kind of, it was the only degree that I could really see myself doing, but I didn't really love it. So at the end of the day, it's kind of like, do you want to choose something that's practical and would make you money,
Yeah.
or or do you want to choose something that like you really love but you risk not being able to make any money for a while? Yeah, so definitely like it got
Gotcha.
me off to the right foot. um it got me to be in California, and kind of by accident, I just kind of fell into the tech world, and fought my way to get into the tech world, and then here I am. Yeah.
Awesome. So I guess final one before a shout out would be then would you kind of consider going for like a master's in, software engineering or like iOS development or something like that? Because I know like
Mm.
I've
Um,
like some of the bootcamp grads in the same cohort or even the ones after me kind of went for that afterwards, like
oh, that's really
taking
cool.
classes part time or something like that. So yeah, so I'm kind of curious if
Yeah,
you would kind
yeah.
of consider doing that sometime in the future.
Hmm. Um, I don't think so. I don't see myself wanting to pursue a higher education for something technical. On the other hand, what I would love, if it didn't cost so much, would be to pursue like an MBA, because I am really interested
Mm,
in all the different aspects of business. So not only like marketing, branding, sales, human resources, the psychology behind it, but also just like the intricacies and like taxes and the accounting. Like I find that all very, very interesting to me. And I feel like with my background in software development combined with knowledge in business could be like a real powerhouse move in the future. Yeah. But I don't
Ooh,
really know if I'm actually going to go back to
okay.
school.
Yeah, but
MBAs
MBA.
cost a lot of money. Yeah. I think it's actually kind of unusual for a
Yeah,
software engineer to pursue an MBA unless they want to go into like venture capitalism or something like that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them do
Start their own
that. That's like a
corporations.
new thing. Pretty
Awesome.
much.
Um,
It's kind of crazy.
dope. So I guess final thing is there anyone or anything I guess you want to shout out before we kind of close out?
Yeah, if any of you in the audience are interested and you want to learn more about how to change careers and a lot of those sort of like know-hows that you might not even find that sort of advice on the internet, feel free to follow me on my Instagram, which is at self-taught Stephanie, STEPHANIE. And I have a similar Twitter handle, except I don't tweet anything tech related. I just kind of use it as a rant. But a lot of people, I
Oh,
guess, like what I ran about because I have like 2K plus. I think I have 2.5K now on Twitter over the last 6 months. But that one's a self-taught
sh-
Steph, STPH. So yeah, if any of you are
shameless plug,
interested,
but
I'm there. Feel
yeah.
free to.
And I'm gonna see
Yeah,
if Stephanie can send me the links because they'll be in the description below for I don't know how many viewers, like 100 something that watch this. Yeah, but it'll be there and even time stamped. So there's gonna be timestamp for people who prefer that as well. So I feel like people seem to like that these days.
hmm
So yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
as for myself, you can just find me on YouTube, like see these videos, see like my stupid Fortnite videos that I should probably take down because they're like irrelevant with like 2 views.
Comment, like, and
Or my
subscribe.
Instagram if you want to see like yeah, like, subscribe, comment, share, sleep with my video playing under your pillow. I don't know. Sleep with Stephanie's voice from Instagram or something like that too on the site. So you have like both of everything. But whatever makes you sleep at night, if that's me or not, or if that's us or not, then awesome. But yeah, but that'll do it for us. Yeah. So safe safe travels, I guess, with the whole Delta variant for people who don't think that's propaganda. And if you do, then you do. I'm not gonna change your opinion. But yeah, so stay safe, everybody out there, including Stephanie. Don't go crazy. I know masks are now required for indoor activities in LA as of today.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of see
Mm-hmm.
what happens.
Mm-hmm.
If gym closes down, I'm gonna have to start my own business, like AKA.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
just not gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm lucky where I
And
go
I need to
to
find room
an
to do it
outdoor
too.
gym.
Oh
Oh
my
yeah.
gosh, LA
That's
Fitness, man, you guys need to get on top of that. Oh dear. All right, well, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy out there.